This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
So what is Shovavim anyway? Many people ask. You see various signs all over Yerushalayim. Shovavim, shiurim. So what is Shovavim all about? And what are we meant to be accomplishing during the weeks of Shovavim? We know that Shovavim is the Rosh Yeshiva Beis Dovid. Sometimes it's extended another 2 weeks. But Shovavim is a zman with there are many shiurim given on many topics. And I'd like to start by giving a short introduction to what is Shovavim and what are we meant to learn from the weeks of Shovavim and how to gain the most from these weeks. I want to explain with a story. The Kav Sofer had a son. The Kav Sofer had a son called Reb Shimon Sofer. Reb Shimon Sofer is a goyin olam, mamash at tzaddik. He used to fast many, many days. He was immersed in limud Torah, in tefillah. He was mamash a goyin, a tzaddik. This was when he was a bacha. When it came time to marriageable age, you can imagine, the shidduchim started pouring in. And he got married to a certain very, very wealthy person's daughter. And he entered into the family, into this huge mansion where they were served by waiters with white gloves. And it was a whole different lifestyle for him. He was used to sitting on the, sleeping on the bench of the Beis Medrash. He wasn't used to this beautiful, pampered life. And month after month it was bugging him, it was annoying him how it was detracting from his avodas HaKodesh. He just didn't feel it the same way as he used to. He used to fast, he used to live in poverty, he used to, lie on the bench. Mamish, a real Mesiras Nefesh for Torah. And now he's living a whole different life. He turns to his wife 6 months after they're married, and he says, "My dear wife, I love you dearly, but I need to get out of here. I cannot continue my avodas Hashem. I cannot continue to strive and get better in this atmosphere. It just doesn't work for me." So his wife said, "Listen, I appreciate what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from, but I can't. This is my parents. This is my house. This is where I grew up. I need to stay here." So he left it alone. Another month or two later, he said to his wife, "Listen, please, I'm begging you. I need to go somewhere for my spiritual being. I cannot stay here anymore." And his wife said, "Listen, I appreciate it, I understand, but please, you have to understand me. This is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where I'm going to stay." A couple of months later, he turns to his wife and says, "Listen, I have no other choice, but unfortunately I'm going to have to ask you to choose. Is it here or is it me?" This young woman, newly married, was expecting a child at the time. She was pregnant from Reb Shimon Sofer. And she says, "You're asking me a very, very hard question, a very hard decision to make, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to choose here. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stay here. If you want to go somewhere, it's your choice, it's your free will. There's nothing I can do to stop you." So they part on good terms. He writes her a get, and they get divorced, and he moves away. This young lady, who was, again, still pregnant, baby from Reb Shimon Sofer, she gets eventually a shidduch with the Beis Yitzchak. The Beis Yitzchak was known to be one of the gedolei poskim, mamash a goyin at tzaddik, unbelievable. And they got married, and the baby was born. This is the son of Reb Shimon Sofer. And this baby always grew up thinking that he was the child of the Beis Yitzchak. He didn't know anything different. From the day he was born, the Beis Yitzchak was his father. He had no idea anything else. Until years and years came down the line, 18, 19, 20 years down the line, this boy sits down with his father at the time when the shidduchim were coming in, and the Beis Yitzchak turns to this boy and he says, "Listen, my dear son, my dear boy, I'd like to reveal to you a secret. And the secret is that you're not my child. The secret is that you are actually the son of Reb Shimon Sofer, the famous Reb Shimon Sofer, which was then known worldwide to be one of the tzaddikim in Goyin Olam." And the boy said, "What? How can this be? I don't know who I am. I'm confused. Am I Beis Yitzchak? Someone is Reb Shimon Sofer's son." He was confused. He was upset. He was confused. Whatever. He says he asked permission from his father. "Can I please take a couple of weeks of vacation? I need to go out. I need to think. I need to breathe a little bit." So father said, "Sure." Give him all the money that he needs, and off he goes. And he goes traveling around the world, finding himself, exploring who he is. And he comes to a place of Vienna. very wealthy little boy, 18, 19, 20-year-old boy, very wealthy, all the money, stays in the fancy hotels in Vienna, and he's looking for some kosher food. So he asks people, where do I find a kosher restaurant? So tell him, go down there, that corner, they have a kosher restaurant. No, fine. He goes over to the kosher restaurant, he walks inside, the place is booming, the place is unbelievably packed, he can't get in. So he goes over to the waitress and says, please, is there a spare place? Is there a table? Is there some corner that you can give me some food? I'm starving. I've just checked into my hotel. I'm going to be here for the next couple of days. I need to eat something. So she looks around and says, look for yourself. I mean, there's nowhere. And he notices in the corner, there is a table there with an old man sitting there. So he says to her, well, listen, I see that table over there. Do you mind if I go over to the man to ask if I can join him? She says, sure, no problem. So he goes over to the man and said, would you mind if I join you? I need somewhere to eat. This is the only place in the restaurant. He says, sure, no problem. So he goes and sits down, and the man extends his hand and says, Shalom Aleichem, what's your name? So this is where the truth is actually a very hard question. I don't even know my name. Until now I thought I knew who I was. But they tell me now I'm a sofer or something. He says, sofer? Which sofer? The boy says, I don't know. The father, which I thought was my father, told me that really my father is Reb Shimon Sofer. The man says, what? Reb Shimon? That can't be. That's my father. It can't be. That's my father. So the man says, what are you talking about? That's who I was told is my father. Anyway, this man sends a telegram back to his father. And the father says, yes, you're right. There's another brother. There's another child. That is also your brother. That was from a different marriage, and this is your brother. The nimshal, even though it's a true story, here is that many times a person can go through life without actually knowing who he really is. A person can go through 60, 70, 80, 90, Be'ez Hashem, 120 years, and he doesn't know who he is. He can go his entire life without the full realization of who he actually is. And it's this time right now that we're going to discover who we really are. The makar, the source of Shovavim, is actually brought down at the time of the Rishonim already. The time of the Trumas Hadeshin seemed to have the minig of Shovavim. It was recorded by his Talmud, the Leket Yosha. The Leket Yosha wrote down many minhagim from his Rebbe, the Trumas Hadeshin, and he wrote that in an Uber year, right, in a year where there's an extra month. So they start fasting every Thursday, starting from Parashas Shemos all the way to Parashas Tetzaveh. Shovavim, already the time of the Rishonim, the late Rishonim. These minhagim was found in other places in Klal Yisrael. Talmidei, the Marshal, the Levush, the Matei Moshe, the Shlach, the Shater Zakenim, the Arizal, Tosfos Yontov. It's brought down in the Magen Avraham, Tofresh Behei, that this was the minig in Klal Yisrael. That Klal Yisrael seemed to have some kind of interesting goings on at the weeks from Parashas Shemos all the way down to Tetzaveh, including Mishpatim, but sometimes even later. And the reason is why. What's the pshat? What are we doing this for? People fast, people say Tehillim, people do all sorts of things. Right, we'll speak about Be'ez Hashem, the topic of this year, Be'ez Hashem. But what's it all about? So the Matei Moshe brings from his Rebbe, the Marishal, that says in a leap year, and there's an extra month, there's more than a half a year between one Bahab and the other Bahab. We know after Sukkot and after Pesach, Monday, Thursday, Monday, there's something called Bahab, Beis, Hey Beis. Many people fast, people say Slichos during davening. And it's a time of tshuva. After Yom Tov, a person could have done certain Averis, and therefore there's a time of tshuva after Yom Tov. Brings down the Matei Moshe from his Rebbe, the Marishal, that in a leap year, it's too long. It's too long between one Bahab and another, but we need something in the middle. And what is that something in the middle? That something is called Shovavim. The Arizal brought down the Behetiv says, these days are a skula for a person to attack in the Chet Yadua, which is why we start from Parashas Shemos, which is the beginning of the Shibud Mitzrayim, and we finish by Mishpatim when we go out free. A person, and Be'ez Hashem, the Rabbi said, this is what we're working on. We're here to free ourselves. Free our souls from what? Free ourselves from that Yetzer Hara that ties us down. Free ourselves from that Yetzer Hara that we're Meshubbat to. That we have a Shibud, just like the Shibud of Mitzrayim. They went down to Mitzrayim and they became slaves. How many of us are slaves to our Yetzer Hara? Now we may not look at it that way, but it's the Metzias. And Be'ez Hashem, as we'll see as we go along with the shiurim over the next few weeks, we will see how obvious this becomes. that we're actually a slave to our own Yetzer Hara. That's what all we are. We're actually a slave. We have no free will of our own. And when a person realizes how bad it can be, when a person realizes how to break free, he becomes a free man. Because he realizes who he is and what he can do. And that's exactly the lesson of Shovavim. In fact, even though it's true that the Makoris of Shovavim actually come from an Ibra year, they come from a leap year when there's an extra month, it is brought down from many of the posts in the Prima Godim, for example, the Chidah and others, the Shod V'Shosh V'Avodah, that we do Shovavim even in a case where it's not a leap year, like this year, for example, it's a regular year, we go all the way until Mishpatim, right? Shovavim is all the way, the Mem is all the way till Mishpatim, the Shin, the beginning of Shovavim is Shemois. We start now, we go all the way till Shovavim. In fact, it's brought down, the Arizal and many Alpi Kabbalah, that the Ikat Tshuva that a person should do during Shovavim is fasting. That's what a person does. When a person, in fact, the Megad Mishorim brings from the Beis Yosef in Parshas B'Shalach, that these are the days that a person fasts and does tshuva is accepted more than any other day, perhaps of the whole year. The Arizal said to fast every single day. The Matzah Moshe Levush say every single Monday and Thursday. Lemaisa, most of the Hasidic Svarim, for example, the Medrash of Magid, the Shem Ishmael, the Kotzker Rebbe, Oiv Yisrael, the Balatanya, the Vayatziv, Slonim Rebbe, most of them say true. In the olden days, it was to fast, to break ourselves. Now it's Torah. Now the Ikat Tshuva, the Ikat Tikkun that we will have to fix ourselves up, to break ourselves free from that Yetzer Hara, is Torah. And why? The Gleital brings, a famous Gleital in the Akdama brings from the Kotzker, that the Kotzker Rebbe says every single Aveira, if you go down to the root of the Aveira, starts right over here. Starts in the mind, starts in the head, starts in the brain. That's where it gets going. When you learn Torah, you fix that up. When you learn Torah, Torah fixes that up. It is not brainwashing, it's de-brainwashing from all the garbage that you saw before you learned the Torah. That's what it is. Right? The world looks at it as you're being brainwashed. No fakir, we're dry cleaning you. We're washing you up from all the garbage you've got until then. That's what Torah does. Tehillim, many people say Tehillim, many people do different things. You know, the Baal Shem Tov said a Mordecai Maisa, mirroring to what we just said and we started with from the Maisa of Shimon Seifer. He said that, he brings it down in the Sefer told us Yaakov Yosef, he says there was a simple guy, Mamish, a simple guy, he didn't even know very much. Interesting fellow. He would fail at everything he did. He Pasha didn't know how to do anything successful. Didn't know how to do anything successful. People used to nickname him Chayzik. Chayzik means a joke, right? They used to nickname him Chayzik. That was his name. So every single day he had a major problem. Every single day he had the same problem. He prepared his clothes the next day, the week before he went to sleep. And then when he woke up, he forgot where he put his clothes. So someone said to him, why don't you write a note before you go to sleep? Write a note. Where did you put? I put the socks under the bed. I put my shoes next to the bed. I put my shirt on the hanger. Write down where you put everything. So when you wake up in the morning, you'll know where everything is. So that's a great idea. So the next morning he reads the list. He reads the whole list, right? But he can't find himself. He's looking for himself. And the Baal Shem Tov used this as a marshal to teach that sometimes we're so organized and we've got everything worked out. But what about us? What about ourselves? That's exactly what Shovavim is in. The tzaddikim tell us that in the older generation, yes, it was tshuva and rolling out in the snow and all sorts of breaking the ice and going into the mikveh. But now, as the generations get lower and lower, as we get weaker and weaker, we have a wonderful matana. And this matana is the 6 to 8 weeks. This year it's 6 weeks of Shovavim that a person can really work on it. In fact, Tzvi Maya Zolberg writes that during these weeks, if you look at the parashas and the Torah, we're reading Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Matan Torah. Why? Because these are the weeks starting from Shemois, we're Shibud Mitzrayim, we're in Mitzrayim, we're slaves. We're on the lowest level. Mitzrayim was mamish, the lowest level of Tumah. And yet we came out. And not only did we come out, but we reached the highest madregas. We reached the highest heights. That when we stood the Bar Sinai, we were mamish malachim. And what's it teaching us? That these are the weeks that a person can break free. These are the weeks that a person can work on himself. These are the weeks that the tremendous siyata d'shmai comes from Shammai, perhaps more than any other time of the year. There's a special siyata d'shmai right now, starting from today, Parashas Shemois, all the way down to Parashas Mishpatim. Rabbi said it's a matana toiva. And the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, when you have a matana toiva, you have to let people know that you have that present. Otherwise they're not going to appreciate it, they won't utilize it. There's a wonderful present, and that present is the weeks of Shovavim. The weeks of Shovavim, Be'ezah Hashem, we over here in the yeshiva are going to spend for Bachrim something which I believe is negay not only to bochrim, but to married men. It's negay to every single human being that walks on the planet. I know this from the many emails that came from last year's Shovavim, shiurim, thanking me for all the shiurim and how much it helped them over the years and months afterwards. Rabbi said there's a tremendous matana in that Shovavim. Shovavim is a time for a person to work on what? As we said all the way in the beginning, to recognize who you are. To realize who you are. A person, as we said, can go through his entire lifetime without realizing who he really is. Why? Because you're a slave to Yetzer Hara. And you're going to live your whole life as a slave to that Yetzer Hara with a little voice inside of you telling you what to do. So you're not really a free person. You've got no way of doing things the way you want to do them. You're subject to somebody else's authority, and that's the Yetzer Hara. Rabbi said, Be'ezah Hashem, in the coming weeks, we're going to learn about things that I believe many people don't know too much about. Many people think it's a midas chasidus, it's a nice thing to do, it's a choshev thing to do. What we will learn Be'ezah Hashem, starting from next week, will be the inyanim of Kedushas Einayim, of the power of the eye, how powerful this eye that the Rebbeinu Shalom created us with, and what we can do with it in order to have a happy, safe, and healthy life. In Mitzvah Hashem next week, we'll start Share number 1.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.